I know it's always very, very early for some people, but I know by midday this hall is going to be packed full. So welcome to the ninth edition of the Social Media Conference. It's always my pleasure to introduce the Dean of the Cathy Hughes School of Communications to open up this social media conference. Every year she has always been the one giving all the welcome address. So, and I always joke with her, I say, come back by midday and you are going to see the keynote speaker and you will always enjoy it. So don't just give the welcome speech and then disappear and then don't show up. So she has really assured me this year that she's really going to come back. All right, so please, let's give a round of applause to my Dean, Dean Lawson, Gracie Border, the Dean of Cathy School. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm going to get us excited to get started because I am pleased to be here and I'm glad that you are here. And as Dr. Langner said, I am the Dean of the Cathy Hughes School of Communication. And it's always my pleasure to come to the annual Social Media and Technology Conference. And this is the 9th year, so it's wonderful. What I hope is over the next couple of days, which we really have an all-day program today, is that you'll share and hear research that looks at best practices from social media experts, scholars, and professionals. We know social media is ubiquitous, which makes it imperative that we examine its impact on our social media ecology. We need to look at what people are doing, how they're doing it, the impact it's having on their personal and professional lives, the way the private has become both public, political, and personal, as you know. So I always like to dig around for a few little numbers to have fun with. So I went on the makeawebsitehub.com, and as of June 2019, these are the top 10 social media sites. Facebook, of course, sets the pace at the top with 1.6 billion users monthly. Then we have WhatsApp, WeChat, Qzone, Tumblr at number 6, Instagram at 7, Twitter at 8, Google at 9, and Baidu Tibio of China at number 10. In America, we're right now looking at an increase in social media use. So we went from 216 million people actively using social media in 2018 to we're now at 223 million people using social media actively in the US. So the numbers are growing, but who's counting? You're here to see and hear what each of you are sharing in your research and what is going on across the landscape of looking at everything from relationships to marketing to bullying and cybersecurity. We know Facebook is a page turner, Instagram is of course snapping right away, and Tumblr is doing its thing, and I can make up metaphors to keep going. But what's important is you have so many people that say social media doesn't impact them, but its tentacles do. We're all touched in some way about this research because somebody either sends us a text and says, I want you to see this, or this is trending, and to get us to pay attention. So today is going to be great. You're going to have our keynote speaker, Rebecca Goolsbee, the program officer for the Office of Naval Research in Virginia. We'll also do some Google training with Maggie Farley, and of course, the presentations and workshops that so many of you will be involved in. So what I just asked you to do is enjoy, to listen and learn, to participate and engage, and welcome again to the 9th Annual Social Media and Technology Conference at Howard University. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ingrid Sturgis, Assistant Chair in the Department of Media, Journalism, and Film in the Cathy Hughes School of Communications. And I want to welcome you to our 9th Annual Social Media Technology Conference and Workshop. We've been doing this for 9 years, and it's really interesting to see how the trend has grown and all the interest just keeps growing in social media because it's really having an impact on every area of our lives, from what we teach, who we teach, how we teach, how it impacts the students, how it impacts the faculty, and how it impacts our security, which is the primary focus of our conference this year. And I'd like to introduce the director of our cybersecurity unit at Howard University. She's going to probably say a few words later, but I just wanted to introduce Rajni Goel. She's doing the research on cybersecurity. And so I'm going to welcome the first panel. The first one is always difficult because it's first thing in the morning. Not everybody's a morning person. But we have Amber Welch. Is Amber here? Oh, okay. So Tracy Whitaker, Derek Lloyd, and Robert Cosby are going to be our first panel. And next we have Dorothy Najuko. And then I'll be the final panelist for this session. So if Derek and Tracy and Robert, is Robert here? Oh, okay, Derek and Tracy can come up. And your presentation is here.
Good morning. Again, good morning. My name is Tracy Whitaker, and I'm an associate professor and the associate dean of academic and student advancement in the School of Social Work.
My name is Derek Lloyd. I'm the former network engineer at Howard University, the school's first CTO, 18 years, and built it out of that.
Today we're going to talk about kind of the opposite of our conference title today. We're going to talk about social media, dying, and the formation of inversity. As we know, social media and technology offer many opportunities for really building multiculturalism across many platforms. It allows us to share opinions, details about our lives with both friends and strangers. It also provides opportunity for this collective information to be used to construct life story archives.
One of the things about technology is it becomes a data warehouse to be mined, whether it's intentional or not. For example, if I am looking for something on you, I can collect it basically from a multitude of sources that are already actively there.
So when we begin to talk about what's happening now, we look to what's happened in the Chinese government and this theory of Dangan, which is a Chinese word for securing and managing information. And it's government-sponsored technology and media that actively tracks the activity of all the citizens, and it's a way of controlling a population's perspectives and restricting the sharing of geopolitical information.
So in other words, if you're a citizen of the Chinese government, everything that you do, you have two different files. You have a file that actually tracks your work and your work performance over a period of time. The other one tracks your normal social activity. These are both used by the government in terms of who gets ahead, or what job you have, what kind of placement you have inside society.
When we think about an example, we look at video gaming in China. So we look at the game World of Warcraft. And in the early days of video gaming, the Chinese population was exposed to the multicultural experiences and lifestyles of players across the world. That meant they were introduced to diverse cultures, economic goals of other populations, exposure to different languages and values, various educational sets, and also entertainment. And this became viewed as a threat to the peaceful norms of the government.
In the early days of Blizzard, which is the company that made World of Warcraft, there was 2 servers, but most of them were international servers. So that means as a player, I would actually interact with other players from all over the world. And I would actually speak to them through messaging in first person and for those who haven't played World of Warcraft, it's a role-playing game where you will have an avatar and you exist inside that world that's made up by Blizzard. Anyway, as you played this game and depending on other people to help you out with the game, you got to know the game. You got to know the people, you got to know persons involved in the game, which means that at some point in time between killing dragons and running around trying to get rich inside the game, you actually spoke to these people, but more importantly, there was a merger between people outside of China and people all over the world, Britain, America, it didn't matter. And they got to see a glimpse of what the world looked like through a game. Once the government discovered that, because it also caused a problem. It also introduced something that was not seen before. It was almost like gold mining. What gold mining is inside of the game, you had gold that you actually collected. What the Chinese government did was collectively put people in a room and had them professionally mine gold inside of the game and then sell it for the real U.S. currency online. This became quite a problem for both the government and also for security.
So as Professor Lloyd was saying, social media allows the creation of any 4D visualized environment where the people in the game participate in different realms that evolve around specific themes that are defined by the environment. They experience analogical learning principles while being exposed to international perspectives and agendas.
Analogical learning, particularly 4D visualization, is no more than education via the visual, that what you can see. Studies have shown that when you learn analogically, you maintain it, your retention rate is much higher than normal 2D or book learning. Diversity as a crude function is really identities times identities times identities, different identities. The difference with inversity is you have several of the same type of identities and a multitude of one direction, but in multitudes in terms of numbers. For example, one could say some of these hate groups and some of these groups that are forming now, you have a whole bunch of people, but they have the same opinion. There's nothing wrong with that when it is only becomes a problem when adversity is used in a negative sense or towards a negative goal.
So when we think about the video gaming exposure really represented a larger threat in terms of exposure to the world. So the government responded by creating its own realm scenario games that propagated party values. And it really resulted in a customized game, a customized version for in-country play only. So it removed foreign play interaction, it severely limited gaming themes, it discouraged and limited outreach to cultures outside the country, and enforced the Chinese government's control of the game and the player's experience. This was a far cry for what began as a video game designed for individual and team entertainment, but became the foundation for inversity. These changes all represented inversity rather than diversity.
And if you look into the dictionary right now for the word inversity, you won't find it. We made it up. There are papers made up. So technically speaking, what inversity is, you're creating a sphere, and this sphere becomes the reality. For example, the Chinese government realized, you have billion people, they probably had something like 32 million people playing the game inside of China by itself. So they corrected the problem. The problem was it was talking to the rest of the world, and they had their own interior game where they could then forward their own values. This became almost a tool to placate the masses. And that's, in other words, I come home from work, I want my character to meet up with my people inside of the game and go on this adventure to get the sort of nuance or whatever. But the whole point was, what a lot of people don't understand about role-playing games, some of your better friends are inside of these games. That became a reality of them. That became a focus point for the common person, which means that that's one less thing that the government has to deal with, because I have millions of people literally rushing home to play their version of the game in the evening, and during the day they're obviously doing their work. But more importantly, I can control the game. I can control the theme, I can control the quest, I can control the whole atmosphere of the side of that game. Companies like Blizzard then agreed to actually make a version just for the country itself. And that version only exists inside of China. And it exists because basically it is, again, an example of what we call global inversity. I know it sounds like a contradiction based on what we just defined it as, But think about it this way, I can literally demand control of what you're seeing, what input you get, who you talk to, because that's all inside of the game itself.
An example of an inversity environment exists right here on our campus at the middle school.
About 6 years ago, we had an issue of STEM and how we're going to propagate that in the middle school here at Howard University. So what we did was we adopted World of Warcraft as our platform because it pays attention to physics. What does that mean? Nothing is really animated. Everything is calculated based on your character. If your character falls, for example, off of a 12-foot cliff, it falls at an acceleration of gravity. In fact, we demonstrated STEM, Y Kingdom, in Congress. And basically what we did was we took 5 of our students, moved into Congress, and they proved the speed equation right in front of everybody. Why? Because inside of the game, distance is distance, but more important, physics is physics as well. So once the student had established the distance and the characters ran across, and they had a stopwatch, they were able to then calculate the time. During that demonstration, one of the congressional members asked us to demonstrate acceleration, thinking that the kids really didn't understand it. And of course, the kids understood the question. So the kids took one of their classmates to the top of the bridge, kicked them off the bridge, and then they basically timed the fall from there, trying to get the acceleration of gravity inside of the game. Again, all this was done live with the characters. If you look at this poster here, the kids have created their own little world, and back is the other instructor. The little elf dwarf female in front is actually me. And the other 4 are my classmates. Now, we did this for several reasons. Number one, the boys had a tendency to be masculine. The point is, if I can do it, you can do it as well. So that took care of the sexism side of the game. But more importantly, because this format was their learning and everything was done in terms of equations, the kids would rush to school. We had kids that were sick, that would show up for class at 4 o'clock and then go back home. So in the end, at the experiment in front of the Congress, the kids came up with a final answer: gravity is equal to 8.8. The instructor at that point in time wanted to know what we could do further to come up with real answers and what we did wrong in terms of coming up with the wrong answer. And one of the kids, who was representative today, leader of the group, said, in the real world, gravity might be 9.8, but in this game, it's 8.8. And she was right, because they wanted to slow it down a little bit. But that shows you just how well the students understand the equations based on the game. So no matter what the equation was, no matter what the STEM problem was, we did it inside of the game, because the game had various animals. We did zoology because the game had vast lands to explore. We did map building and map making. So the kids were able to examine all the scientific principles, again, inside of the game, because it is actually first-person distance learning. A lot of times when I was not in country and in India, I would still come in with my normal character and still teach my classes.
When we talk about kind of the consequences of inversity, it's that it creates its own social secular media based on technology, and it allows privacy neutralizers that can be used to expose previous indiscretions, access personal critical data, conduct financial audits of personal information. It can provide details about family members, influences, your personal working history. It can also be used to out individuals or group associations.
One of the things that we are currently working on a paper called The Justice Density, where we're looking at information itself, technically gained, being used again indiscriminately against mostly the underserved or the poor, poverty. If I'm inside of a city, for example, like Baltimore, there are hundreds of cameras per every 2 blocks, hundreds of cameras. But if I'm out inside the suburbs, say Brookville, Maryland, for example, there might be a camera on the corner here and there. The point is, if I am sampled more, then basically my frequency of being in contact, I'm going to be found guilty more. It's just a very simple equation. So inside of Baltimore, it's not a question. In today's society, because of the cameras, the intake, the input, data itself, sooner or later, you're going to be guilty of something. It's just probability. It has nothing to do with you being bad or good. The accumulation of data is there for me to find. So if I'm looking for something and you're old enough, given enough time, I will find something in terms of what you've done. Identity types, well, the normal one, self-relational, social. We believe that there's a new one called virtual identity, whereas your identity is a function of what you project inside of social media, whether that's Facebook, whether that's Instagram, it really doesn't matter. You have a different set of credentials. For example, inside of a video game, you're always strong, you're always beautiful, you're always in fit. In reality, that's not it. But that is the personality you are inside of that game. You assume that personality. And if you don't believe it, go to a session where these kids have been playing all night on a game. They're tired, they've done work. They feel like they've done work and they're going to sleep. In reality, that is self-evident that they are really doing work. But in reality, you can't actually point out and say, hey, I've done this today. So to a certain extent, when I talk about these virtual worlds that the governments are building or that people are building, that virtual world, even though it doesn't exist in reality, its effects are certainly felt in reality. But currently, if you're looking at some of the political climate going on, whenever something goes wrong, all of a sudden there's an artificial world built around to support those events. In other words, lies can now be directed because basically after the fact, I can make an environment where that fits in. In terms of what went on the last presidential election, for example, the projection of our president is actually a projection of that president. It has nothing to do with the reality sometimes, as he'll prove that when he speaks a lot. But the point is, those worlds can be artificially constructed. Go back to that once. If you see at the bottom, virtual identity is a function of the media, particularly social media. And on its own, it can also create things that really don't exist. And then, I'm sorry.
Social media is actually Inversity's virtual vehicle. It accumulates warehouses of user information, and at a point, the virtual identity, as Professor Lloyd says, substitutes for self-identity. It also serves to define cities by terms such as the underserved, also religion, race, gentrification boundaries, education, and politics. It serves to define groups by their themes and common values.
This is not necessarily a negative. For example, the situation in Baltimore a couple years back with the Baltimore riot, where no one's actually harmed compared to the Virginia protest where, someone actually did get harmed. What's the difference between the two groups? Why use one word for the other? But the reality, I'm from Baltimore. I was in Baltimore on the day of the riot, and I don't know what riot they were at, but there was no riot that I could see. And again, I was dead center, and I have film to prove it. You had people protesting. You had white and black people walking towards City Hall. But if you looked at the news media, you saw a car burning. I do remember seeing that car overheating on the way to it, and I don't know how it went from overheating to burning, people burning it down. But that's not what the world saw. The world saw the collective. And the reason that was quite simple. The city had already had the disturbance the day before, and the city was pretty much shut down. So if you weren't inside of the city, you couldn't get any pictures, you couldn't get any storylines. By the time that you did get to the city, it was night. By the way, all this happened at 1 o'clock during the day, but the only film you saw was at 12 o'clock at night, and that's still burning hot. I guess they're overheating by 5. But the point of view is extreme. But that adversity of what the city citizen had, the citizens of Baltimore wondering, like, what are you talking about? And they're talking about the city of Baltimore and, the recent press coverage of it, and how bad Baltimore is. But the point is, none of that's true. But it is true in terms of the set that they built up in terms of the media of the people.
So one of the dangers is that when we talk about not only is this information available and neutralized, but it can be weaponized. It can be used to destroy reputations, careers, futures. It propagates fake news. And it also serves to placate large populations by reinforcing a narrative that they already believe. It also can be internalized to create and reinforce unique perspectives and points of view, and it can educate from the inside so that shared information, education, and experiences are shared. It also serves as a deterrent to innovative solution for social problems. It challenges the perceived benefits of diversity. It scrubs multiculturalism of its richness. It attacks critical thinking, becomes a tool for racism, and can also become a tool for showing culture. And one of the things that when we were putting this together, we began to think about is if your personal information is collected and can be used against you, it actually shuts down difference of opinion. It becomes a fearful place to express an opinion, particularly when we talk about cancel culture. It becomes much more dangerous to put an opposing point of view out there.
Inversity is something that can only exist with the advent of technology. If I go 80 years back and I'm the president of a company and I don't want something to get out, it's not going to get out. I'm the president of the company. I control a lot of aspects of my country, my company, the media, the press, the people who work for me in terms of my outlook, PR. Everything's controlled by me, the president. That's not true anymore. Everything that is done in a modern company, everything that's done in the modern world is stored somewhere on a data server inside somebody's database. So what we have now is the situation where as things go along, things actually get clear because there's more time for me to go over the data. In the past, as things went along in terms of time, it became more blurry, eventually became a yes or no kind of situation. Oh yeah, that happened, I don't remember the details. But now because of technology and because of data in itself and the formation of data gathering, mining techniques, everything can literally become clear. It's sort of like how a robot or artificial intelligent being would be different to human. Things tend to get simpler over time. Yes, it was good. Whereas machine, well, I got 10 years to go over the same facts. I'm going to find even more facts given enough time. And that's a huge difference that we have to face in terms of social media because it's now all time sensitive. Remember, given enough time, everything pretty much becomes untrue, given enough time. If that was sunny on that day, well, it's not going to be sunny anymore. If that was a boulder, given 1,000 years, well, that boulder's going to fall over. So given enough time, the facts themselves will change because of function of time, not because of function of anything else.
Let's get to it. So this is, so we were talking about fake news. We don't really know who we can trust to provide us with news anymore. Okay, we have 5 minutes. It also means that we really are dealing with serious threats to fundamental freedoms, speech, integrity, truth.
Social realms, again, we pointed out earlier that the realms that you can create basically by your environment inside of role-playing games, but that also applies to the truth in the real world. I can create an environment based on my facts, based on my environments, based on my points of views that I want to express. Economic realms speak for itself based on the position or status of community or a group of people. I can basically establish a realm on that. One could take, for example, the inner cities, and they could also take cities such as West Virginia. Where did they get their news from? I mean, we a lot of times are very critical of their decisions, but you got to remember what's their input. Where does that news come from? USA Today, Fox News. Educated sectors tend to have Washington Post, New York Times available. That's not true everywhere. Inversely, when used as positive, is based on truth. We're going to give an example of inversely. This film from YouTube is actually during the riots of Baltimore, 2015. The difference is these were cameras inside of the city, and these were people from. said before, this is the actual day of the riot. This is the morning starting of the riot. As you can see, there's no riot as we know of. This is an interesting perspective. Watch the National Guard in particular and the police. They don't seem agitated, and neither is the crowd. Okay, again, I just wanted to show you an example of how the perception of that day was a very violent one, but as you can see, it was very well organized. The police, the National Guard, there was no type of any kind of aggressive behavior from the crowd or from the police itself. Most of that film has never been seen before, but that was literally, you're having trouble stopping. I was actually trying to stop it. Thank you. But as you can see, the National Guard trucks along with the MTA buses, but at no point in time did you see that anybody was under distress. At no point in time did you see any kind of confrontation from the crowd. In fact, the crowd, I would say, was about 50-50 in terms of marching on in terms of racial makeup, but that's a far cry what you saw in terms of the rest of the nation. And when someone sees this, this is what the Baltimore people saw, this is what we, the people at the protest saw, and it was a shock to see later on in the night how the city was burning down. But again, because of that adversity principle, because that was a spear unknown only to Baltimore, that was the reality inside the city, two separate realities, what happened in the city and what the nation saw. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
That was really great. I think it's got implications for everything we're doing now. I want to know how our government is using gaming to, spy on us. There's a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, so we're going to have a change in the program. Since we're waiting for some people to come in, we'll go with oh, I forgot, we are streaming live, so if you want to let people know, I'll put the link up in a minute. I was too busy to put it up just before I came up. But I tweeted it out already, so our Twitter handle is SMTECHCONF work, so it's a long one. So the Twitter handle has the streaming link there, but I'll put it up again. And we'll take questions at the end of this session. So the next speaker is going to be Dr. Uwana Samuel Akpan. He's a scholar in residence here at Howard University for this year. And he has 2 decades of broadcasting industry experience in the Federal Audio Corporation of Nigeria. So he's visiting with us from Nigeria. So welcome, Dr. Akpan. Sorry, just give me a minute, almost there.
My name is Unwana Samuel Akpan, as she has introduced me already, and a visiting scholar, of course a postdoctoral research fellow at CCMS Howard University. And when I was told of this conference, the social media conference, I was so excited because a lot has happened in my country. In the last couple of days, I just came back from Nigeria, and I was asking myself, what am I going to, with all the things trending on social media, and I was asking myself, what am I?
It doesn't work. There's a glitch. Yeah, sorry.
All right, so I was asking myself, with all the trending issues on social media, what am I going to talk about? Because there are a million of things to talk about on social media, especially my country is so peculiar. And of course, by the time I went back, can you hear me? Yeah, I realized that there are quite a number of things that have happened there, and of course, the mainstream media were not aware of. So I put this together to be able to come and share with you. Now, those who have a good memory of the media, the history of the history of global media, you would agree with me that the media over the years, since its invention, of course, inception, have suffered a lot of attack threats from world power because of its function, because of its investigative and, of course, informative roles in the society. Public officers, especially in Africa, are always very scared of the media because they have some skeleton in their cupboard, so they wouldn't want things to be dogged out about them. And when when media personnel request for interviews, they're always very careful. At times they will request the kind of questions you want to ask them. And then those attacks on the media those days couldn't even extinct the media. And of course, I remember those days as a young person back in Nigeria. There was a popular belief that then, the radio was the in thing in Nigeria. And of course, you know that radio is the African medium. Everybody in Nigeria, almost everyone, would love to listen to radio. And of course, when television came on board, some people believed that radio would go out of extinction, but television was not able. Okay. All right. And the TV was not able to phase out radio, and of course, so many threats, some other media formats have come out, and of course, the traditional radio and TV, were still there. Let me just do a little citation. According to Adesheye and Ibegere, the mass media have proved to have a great power of influence. No new norms gain popularity in our society without their having been subjected to some forms of treatment in the media. And of course, if you see anything or people reacting to anything, you just find out that it has gone through the annals of the media. Now, Musu also quoting quotes saying that the power of the media, the press, radio, and television, books, magazines, and motion pictures has grown almost geometrically in recent decades. Now, the social media came on board. And I remember in my kindergarten days of mass communication in University of Lagos, they would tell us about the prophets of the new media. I'm talking about the Canadian sociologist McLuhan. He suggested that the development in communication, be it social media, that he was foreseeing, and of course any form of media were the main forces or would be the main force for change in human society. Now, the real importance of the media lies not only in the standardization or structure of their content, but in the way their content would later or is always altering our social world and of course our perception. And don't forget that the title of my presentation this morning has to do with social media versus the mainstream media. I'm talking about the traditional media. Now, this guy's prophecy or the concept of global village, which he brought in, best captures the phenomenon of the social media. You would agree with me. This is what he was foreseeing that would later threaten journalistic standards. And this is where I'm going this morning, and best practices of breaking news. I've been in the media for quite a while, for more than 2 decades. I've reported breaking news and the rest. If you bring in any breaking news from outside, the editors have to look at it. They have to verify the veracity of that. I can't start to tell you the number of breaking news I've brought in Lagos. You know, at the end of the day, some other media houses were not privy to that information because of the skills I've developed over time to be able to capture these breaking news. But before they would allow me to go on air, it will go through what I call bureaucratic scrutiny, journalistic bureaucratic scrutiny, so that because I work with the national media because they don't want to soil their names. And of course, this is what I call the norms of the media. Norms, time, and space have virtually been eliminated, and almost everything and everyone has been brought in and transnationalized. ICTs are the main instrument of this process. I'm talking about social media, of compression of time, place, both physically and representationally. Now, let's look at journalistic standard. In the event of news breaks, the standard is that you try as much as possible to present both sides of the story and be civil, decent, objective, and responsible during such instantaneous journalistic presentation. Now, I'll give you an example. There was a time the INEC national election body, the chairman of it was to be appointed by the military government. And of course, they gave us the news because we know the type of government that we have. They can tell you something 10 minutes to 11, and by 11 o'clock is another story entirely. So they sent the name of someone that this is going to be the new INEC chairman. That's the one overseeing the election body in Nigeria. And this is a major network news. When you are talking about the network news in Nigeria, you are talking about, it's just like saying everywhere in America would hook onto that news. And it was like a tradition. It's still a tradition in Nigeria. And in fact, some other state-owned station and of course private radio stations will hook on. And they brought in this news that we should use it, that this is the name the federal government has approved as the new INEC chairman. Us knowing the kind of government we had, we didn't want to break the news, but others would want to because we know that they might come at any time to change it. So the news items were going on, and the late Professor Chukwu Merije called the news editor and said, why have you not read the name of the new INEC chairman up till now? I've listened to the other news items, and his name is not there. We said, sir, we are just trying to align the news that we will actually read that piece of news. And in less than 5 minutes, he called us. He was the former Minister of Information. He called. and said, I hope you've not read that piece of news. We said no. He said that the government just replaced that name. This is the new name. Now I ask you, what if you had gone on air and then read the news of that, the first name that they gave us? And of course, that was how Professor Humphrey Musu was giving as the new INEC chairman. And of course, in Radio Nigeria, we don't just rush to break the news. So that's what I'm talking about, the standard of breaking a news. Most times, such reports are time-tested and bureaucratic in nature. But in Nigeria, as it might be elsewhere, the social media does not observe these traditional journalistic standards in breaking any piece of news that might be of public interest and constitute security threat to members of the public. Now, this is where I'm going. For you to allow any piece of information to go, be it any kind of breaking news, the editor has to okay it has to pass through some kind of standard to be sure that this is real. Now, before I go to the case study, I remember one time my wife called me and said, I might not be coming back on time today because the Commission of Health just called us that an Airbus is just flying around. He can't land because the tire refused to come out. So my wife is a medical doctor, and the commissioner said, you have to be on ground because there might be an emergency. So in case of emergency, they will bring a lot of emergency victims to the hospital, so you guys have to treat it. So she told me, I will not be coming back on time. But she was telling, can I say the wrong or the right person? Because immediately she told me that I knew it was a piece of news for me. So I took my phone and I called the newsroom. I said, guess what? Emirates Air is just flying around the Murtala Mohammed Airport. He can't land. He can't land because there's something wrong. And because I've been in the business of breaking news, and they were saying, Sam, are you sure? I said, I'm very sure. And then the editor said, open the airwaves, let him go on. And they opened the airwaves. And of course, before you could say Jack Robinson, I was there, and I reported live concerning that airways. And of course, before our aviation reporter could know about it, she didn't even know. I was not in aviation unit. I was in traffic and weather. And they verified, and it was true. But I knew that before they could allow me to go on air, they've tested my report, and they know that if I tell them one, my one is one. Now, the social media guys came up. That's where I'm going this morning. And I just came back from Nigeria, and I just want us to look at just few news breaks that the social media guys, rolled out. And of course, the mainstream media thought it was a lie, but before they knew it, it was what they say it was. Now, we have the case of Meina, Abdul Rashid Meina, the former director, Custom, Immigration and Prisons Pensions Office, and acting chairman, Pension Reform Task Team. He embezzled 2.7 billion pensions fund and fled the country because of the weight of evidence wrongdoing found against him by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Mr. Meina, who's returned to the country, surprisingly, reinstatement to the civil service. This guy came back from wherever he ran to. He came back, and of course, he was reinstated and was promoted. And nobody knew. Of course, the mainstream media didn't know. So somebody saw him, and of course, took a photograph of him, and then went on his social media page, and then started making noise. Said, this guy that the EFCC, the EFCC guys were looking for his back. And for you to do that kind of a thing, the mainstream media would not be able to carry such news, because if he sues you, if they find out that it's not true, you might not only lose your job, you might drag your station or your paper, into a very serious libel case. And the mainstream media went and investigated and found that it was true and that the guy was actually back. And in fact, he went ahead to even wanting to contest for the governor of a certain state in Nigeria, Borno State. But as I'm talking to you, I was told that he's been arrested. So that point, the social media guys, went against the social standard and, of course, the journalistic standards and norms, the procedures of breaking a news. And, of course, it became a trend. It became a major issue within the Nigerian media space. I would love to play this video just a few seconds. There was a case of a senator in Nigeria. This is another classical example of how the social media guys have been able in Nigeria to go beyond or against the normal journalistic standard and, of course, break the news out there. This guy went to a sex toy shop. That was the first time of hearing that word. I didn't know what the word sex toy means, you know, to buy something with a girlfriend. And, of course, he was rude. Yeah. According to him, he said that the lady was rude to him. So a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria started slapping a nursing mother. Please, can you play that link for me? So just some second. And no mainstream media would want to dare, and a senator would want to dare that kind of video. But the social media guys came up and did him. He's a young guy, you can see. There was a recent bill, not too young to run. He's a very young person, and the laws were changed that young people can become senators. Okay, I think the first one. Yes. Just play for some seconds. Not the face, maybe the second. Yes. That's the senator talking. Alokba means police. He's with the police. He said he's with the police.
I said, drop your phone now and go to it. You got my number directly.
And he's with a policeman. Did you see that? That's a nursing mother. Oh, okay. We can. Okay. And he ordered the policeman, the police oddly. You know, in Nigeria, you go as a senator, you're entitled to a police. He ordered the policeman to arrest the nursing mother. And this is what this mainstream media would not dare venture into. So immediately after that, sorry, ma'am, I'll need your help. Immediately after that, somebody took that video from the phone. You can see it was an amateur video. Took the video to some media houses and they said, no, we can do it. Number one, he's a senator. Number two, we are not too sure of this video. And the guy posted it on his, the thing went viral, and the Senate committee, had to summon him and set a panel for him, and I think he was punished. Now, that's the power of the social media that the mainstream media couldn't do. Now, the next one, the young lady here, I don't know what the young boy did. He beat a child, maybe of a misbehavior, and then locked up the young boy in a dog cage. Imagine a young boy, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. He now put him in a cage with accession dogs. And then somebody was on a story building and then captured the picture and then went to the media house, and the media houses refused. And then the guy now put it on his social media handle, and the thing went viral, and the police arrested, and the police arrested her. And after that, civil society organizations went after her, and then, as I'm talking to you, the case in the court, the second link. Yes. It's going to be very brief.
authorities, was taken into custody Wednesday after police analyzed the video and traced her to a specific neighborhood. She was later found there with the boy, whom she identified as her relative, Lagos State Police spokesman Bala Elkanah said. The footage, which has sparked social media outrage in Nigeria, shows the woman flogging a half-dressed boy with a belt and then dragging him into a cage, which she locked. 2 dogs were inside kennels beside the cage where the boy was kept. She actually confessed that she was the one in the video and that he is a cousin who came to live with her after he lost his parents, Elkanah told CNN. CNN has not been able to reach the woman to determine if she has a lawyer. Police said the incident took place August 3rd and that the woman claimed the boy provoked her after he became drunk and damaged her car. She told us that she got angry after the boy took some dry gin and broke the side mirror of her car. Then she locked him in the doghouse for some hours. For this we are going to push to charge her with child abuse, Elkanah told CNN.
All right. So we might not be able to play, I think it's very self-explanatory, we might not be able to play the other video. Yes, so that's the woman, that's the power of the social media. And of course, you heard that the police analyzed the video, not the media house, the mainstream media, but the police analyzed, and of course, after that, the mainstream media, they were interested, and they went, and by the time they went to break the news, it was already late. The social media guys have already done the job. And then the most recent one, in fact, this happened right in front. One of my students I supervised, came to carry me from the airport when I came from the US, my short visit. And when he was driving me home, we saw the drama. Nigerians were attacking South African businesses because of the xenophobia attack. Now what happened was that a particular Nigerian, when their shops were burnt, managed to take a photo of what was happening and sent it to the brothers at Onitsha. Onitsha is in the eastern part of Nigeria, and of course, the brother, who is a social activist, started spreading the video, and before you knew it, they called for a social, outrage, and businesses of South Africans were attacked, and of course, the media, the mainstream media, went to report the news, but it was then social media that started it. Then this is the video I won't be able to play, maybe because of security reasons and all of that. You can see it online. This is the chopper of the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It crashed when they were going for campaigns. I think that was this year or last year for the presidential campaign. And of course, the thing crashed, and nobody, no mainstream media would want to date it. But at the end of the day, the social media guys put this on air, and it was true. Now, this is my conclusion. If social media is not checked, that's unchecked, the social media could control the minds, actions, destiny of the global citizens as a strategic social institution. I'm talking about the social media now. It is capable of defining and determining a social reality, set public agenda through their content. It has already shaped media content and, of course, formats. And, of course, don't forget that they might also take the big market. I'm talking about advertisement from them, because when people visit the social media a lot to listen to news and all of that, that is where advertisers would go. Thank you.
Again, we're going to take questions at the end. We have the next panel, Dorothy Najuko Sadat Nakweje Kimulu and Kasimu Sindalu. I think they're here. Do you need a minute? They just came in, so. Do you need a breather or? But is it, yeah, you gotta try. Howard University. And I sent out another tweet with the link in it, and you will be able to see it, so I'm just going to pull up my link. So my presentation today is about social cybersecurity and a little bit about what I found out about it this past summer when I went to a conference. So I thought it was something that was so interesting that I wanted to bring it to the conference. And what I learned and the opportunities for research and the opportunities for funding for the research. And our keynote speaker is going to talk a little bit more about it when she comes up later. So I went to this conference that talked about social cybersecurity as an emerging scientific area that's focused on the, excuse me, the science to characterize, understand, and forecast cyber-mediated changes in human behavior, social and cultural political outcomes, the science and engineering to build cyber infrastructure needed for society to persist in its essential character in a cyber-mediated information environment under changing conditions, actual or imminent social cyber threats. And this is the formal definition that comes from an organization that's really gathering the people, the scholars, to study this topic. So there's a little background. The conference was sponsored by the National Science Foundation, and it was an interdisciplinary workshop that was focused on the spread of information, disinformation, and fake news. And at Howard University, we have a fact-checking site for the students, and we are very interested in fake news, especially the School of Communications and the journalism program. So the goal of the workshop was to develop a scientific agenda for research in this area. And I thought it was kind of interesting that I was invited to attend because I don't have a computer science background, but like I just said, it was an interdisciplinary, so there were scholars who were interested in journalism, computer science, psychology, sociology. So it was a very interesting group of people who had come to talk about it, and I was surprised, well, maybe not so surprised, to find how much research has already been done in this area. So the objective was to identify what basic science is needed to advance the understanding of the spread and susceptibility to and the impact on groups of disinformation and information in contrast to information in a cyber-mediated environment. So it's important. This is really an important topic because it takes social media from its roots of something to connect people to something a little bit more sinister. So as the internet grows more sophisticated, it's creating new threats to democracy, and social media companies are able to sort us more efficiently so that we form like-minded groups and echo chambers that amplify our views and amplify nefarious views. So users accessing social media sites have opened new routes for attackers to gain access to the accounts of individuals. Because social media is so ubiquitous, it just means that more and more of us are vulnerable, even if we're not directly attacked, to the attacks by people who don't have your best interests at heart. So right now we're in a period where there are more falsehoods available than there is truth. If you think about what the president is tweeting out every day, most of it is lies and confusion, and it's meant to provide disinformation so that we're not sure what to believe or who to believe. In addition, we're also in a period where a lot of news organizations and scholarly sites are, I don't want to say hiding, but they're placing their content behind paywalls, which means that it's less accessible to people who might need or want that information. So if you're a scholar doing research in this area, you might have to pay $30, $50, $100 to access a single article on a topic that's very important to you, which might make you go to another source that's more readily available but has not been vetted as well. Same thing with journalism sites. You know, the New York Times, everybody is behind a paywall. So what that means is that we, students especially, have less access to general information that we all need in order to function in a democratic society. And that has implications on young people especially, because young people often don't know where to turn for the truth, and they assume that what they see in social media a lot of times is the truth, and it impacts them, and it will impact our society even further. So it's no accident that on some occasions people of different political views cannot even understand each other. I think it's an intent to do that. And it's no surprise that terrorist groups have been able to exploit social media to its deadly effect. So this was an article that was in the New York Times, White Terrorism Shows Stunning Parallels to the Islamic State's Rise. And so we're having a period where we have a lot of young men, mostly white in this case, who are engaging in terroristic acts because they've been brainwashed by what they read on social media and the groups that they engage in social media, because they might be single-minded groups whose purpose is to disrupt and break down societal norms. So at Carnegie Mellon, they created a center to fight this disinformation online. So the purpose of the study, or my paper, or my presentation, is to just examine this emerging scientific area and to hope that we can all think about this as an area for research, because apparently there is funding for this kind of research. So the threats, the need is to develop technology and theory to assess, predict, and mitigate instances of influence and community manipulation through alterations in or control of cyber-mediated information via bots, cyborgs, or humans. So we have this threat that's coming not just from people giving us this information. We also have artificial intelligence and bots that are creating information that multiplies the information that you see, so that it's harder to tamp down on the things that we see that are not true. So, for example, if Twitter doesn't change, they theorize, it can be harder to distinguish between human and bot activity. Because you know that a lot of people would, I think Twitter followers are not all real people. Many of them are bots. And so Twitter has been trying to crack down on the fact that bots are following everyone or influential people. But I don't think that they have the capacity to do it because it's so entrenched. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have more content from cyborg accounts, and natural language processing will struggle to find the differences. And so that's the technology that allows us to see what's true and what's not. And so some of that is going to be more difficult, because as AI makes technology more humanistic, it'll be harder to distinguish it. Right now, we already have, I don't know if you've seen the video with Barack Obama talking and saying things that he never said, and it's a video, so now they can alter videos so that they're so humanistic and realistic that you think it's the actual person talking and providing the information. We also have chat bots, and so they're going to get more sophisticated. And like, for example, Google Assistant and Alexa, which I do use. Alexa has invaded my home. So all of those things are going to be more sophisticated, and we need to think about how we're using them and what kind of information we're providing when we do use them. So right now, we're in a period where media consumption is rising. It's not falling, even though newspapers are dying, and that's a whole other issue, because without newspapers, it's been shown through data that engagement in civic society and in governmental processes declines. And so we're in a period where newspapers, even college papers, this week the University of Maryland took its paper online, and so And we at Howard are struggling to even have a print copy of our paper. And so when this is happening on the level of high school, and we also know that, newspapers, every week there's one closing, so this means that fewer people have access to this information, fewer people have access to true and factual information, even though they're searching for more information online, because you know that Google searches increase and other searches, internet searches increase. So more mainstream media is using synthetically generated headlines. We know that, I believe, the Wall Street Journal uses computers to write some of its news. I believe Bloomberg also uses AI to create simple news stories. And so, we don't know how those technologies are going to advance, and, will the bot take over the news and, tailor it to what they care about? Anyway, and there's also more reliance on voice audio to send messages. And so when you get those messages, who's actually delivering the message? Whose voice is it? Can we detect whose voice that is? I'm not sure that we know. And so more marketing agencies also are where politicians feel they need to buy bots. So the companies that are helping these political campaigns are also enlisting these bots to impact the competition. So AI bots should make us more critical of the news that we're getting. Younger generations won't have the same cultural touchstones because we're in such a divided period in society. So, when I grew up, I watch HGTV, and so they have this whole thing on the Brady Bunch that's really kind of alarming, but also kind of comforting. But who in the younger generation even knows? I know they're on rerun, but they don't have that same warm, fuzzy feeling about somebody like the Brady Bunch that we might have. And so the things that they're interested in is more scattered and diverse than maybe what we grew up on. And so you have to think about how younger people are interpreting the information they're getting, and will there be some common theme or common purpose for them to rally around? We don't know, because things are changing so quickly. And then they're also thinking that people who want to move away from sensationalist news are now going to podcasts. So instead of them getting a broader view of what's happening, we want to get away from all of those Trump tweets, and so we're going to our own little thing. So, for a while, I had to get off NPR because there was just so much going on with the administration that I couldn't deal with the horrors that were happening every day. So I went away and I was listening to podcasts, but then I had to come back because I really wanted to know what's happening. But what happens to the people who just drop off the information grid and decide that they don't want to hear anything that's alarming or unsettling about what's happening? And that has implications for our elections here and worldwide. So we also are in a period where traditional institutions are experiencing diminishing trust. Remember, there was a period when everybody said, oh, you should go to college, and so now they're saying that colleges have some more sinister purposes, and that everybody shouldn't go to college, and that college doesn't have the value it used to have. So we're in a period where even an institution that has been around since the forming of the nation and always had a common purpose is being criticized for something that's less than upstanding. And so we have to worry about what's going to happen when this reaches a critical mass. The only place now that really people still have some faith in is the public library. And that's also the place where you can get information, but that's also the place where governments are cutting back on funding public libraries. And so marketing companies are also targeting consumers through algorithms. And you know that because when you go to Google, you can see the place where you went shoe shopping, and you don't want everybody to know you did the shoe shopping thing. And so, but it's going to show up. If I turn to my Google search you'd see a little too much about me. So you have this place where marketing companies avoid placing information in newspapers, and they target you directly, which means that you're getting more content that's tied to your beliefs and your views and your interests, and that's also shaping how we see the world. And we also are in a period where our news organizations are dealing with how to handle Google and Facebook as the disseminators of news. Because I think there was a report recently that Google was not going to pay news creators for publishing or disseminating their news anymore. They've decided against it, and Facebook has flip-flopped on whether or not it wants news in its streams or whether or not it wants your family activities in its stream. So we have to pay attention to how we're going to get our news if we're not going to get it through Google and Facebook and Twitter. You know, is anybody going to go to the the news site? So, so consumers don't know who to trust for information, and it could give rise to more of a grapevine effect where you tell me and I tell you, and so it's outside of the realm of what everybody knows. And you know that thing where you tell somebody and they tell somebody hearsay, it gets distorted the further away it goes from the facts. And so we also have a period where students are encouraged to write for news sites or news sites instead of their campus papers, which weakens the newspaper culture. I see that I only have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to skip over some of the slides. So where to go to find the reliable information? We talked about the paywalls, the echo chambers, and the silos. Can Siri be a library? Is that where we're going? Is that where we're going to get our news from, our apps on our phones? Do we have to subscribe? Who's going to be providing that information? And the attention spans are shorter. Is anybody going to read a 30-page academic paper? Or are they just going to skim it, or are they just going to read the beginning parts? And so academics have the responsibility to create and preserve knowledge. And so this is an opportunity for us in academia to start to research all of these things that are going to make us, make society stronger and preserve democracy. I think that we really have to think about whether or not that's our purpose and what kind of information are we going to be creating that's going to benefit the total society. So let's see. I'm going to go here. Just some critical areas. Politics is critical. We all know that because of the 2016 election, Hillary's emails, non-story, Russian interference, the Bernie bros, which attack anybody who doesn't believe in Bernie. We also have disasters where we have the possibility of disinformation around disasters. Remember that shark that was floating in the Hudson River during Hurricane Sandy that really wasn't there? Misinformation in the health domain. We have the anti-vax campaigns as well as people who fight against getting the Ebola vaccination in some parts of Africa. And the question is the anti-vax information coming from Russian bots trying to weaken America? And we also have security, homeland, national, and personal human security. There's a group called the Hurricane Hackers out of MIT, which works to provide information about how to offer services around disinformation campaigns in disasters. So I had this. I'm not going to play it. So some of the gaps: more social science experimental studies, more longitudinal studies, need to better understand how to map and explain to people the provenance of information, need to understand questions of trust dissipation. Where will people turn to for information? How will people continue to use automation and new words that make bot detectors function? And I think that's basically it. I'm going to let it go. So if you have more questions, this is an area that is really interesting to me, and I'm hoping that maybe we can have some conversations around it. And like I said, we have a noontime speaker that's going to give us more information about social cybersecurity. Okay, thank you very much. And I know I rushed through that. I had a lot more slides, but I don't want to hold up time. Now, we were ahead and now we're a little behind. So we're going to have our next speaker. You send it to my Gmail, my email, Howard email? Okay, this is not my computer, so I don't know. If you want to take a 2-minute break, feel free to take a 2-minute break. It's going to take me a minute to retrieve this from my email and set it up. So if you need a break, feel free to take it right now. No, my phone. It's okay. Came right in time. I better take a break so you don't have to rush. We're running a little behind, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Thank God for technology. All right, we're going to take one more minute and then we're going to get ready to start with Dorothy Nejuko.
A very good morning to everyone. My name is Dorothy Najuko from Uganda. I'm a master's student at Makerere University Business School, and this research is ongoing. The topic of discussion is the impact of social media privacy on small business performance, and we considered a case of small business dealing in second-hand clothes, and this is Kampala, Uganda. The structure is basically the introduction, the methodology, study findings, the discussion, summary and conclusion, then the references. So the increasing contribution of small businesses to the growth and development of economies worldwide makes their performance vital. So just like Uganda, in our country, the composition of the business performance is basically small businesses. So we cannot underestimate their performances, and that's why we labor to look at how social media can really improve, or could it be of a big impact to them. So due to their relevances, such countries like Uganda develop programs in improving or in seeing how can these businesses thrive. So the initiative or the composition of the Uganda's economy is basically 75% are small businesses, and they fail to complete their first birthday because most of them cannot hold on the pressure. So social media as a strategy in promoting small business performance in Uganda is associated with privacy issues. So in Uganda, basically, because it's the study context we are looking at, we have a lot of challenges, especially when it gets to social media use. The government of Uganda initiated through the UCC, that is Uganda Communications Commission, it initiated the public notice warning in regard to the use of social media. So we have to pay OTT tax in order to access social media. So this has motivated the current study to investigate the impact of social media privacy on performance of small businesses in Uganda. So the study context is Owino market. This is one of the largest markets in Uganda, and actually it has the other name called St. Bali Kudembe. It opens and occupies 7.04 hectares of land in Kampala, Uganda, and it was established in 1971. So there are over 50,000 vendors who are occupying that market, who approximately 70% are women. So women occupy most of these parts because they're the major dealers in the business. However, traders and customers in Owino have faced several challenges. So they include pickpocketers, thieves, outbreak, and all that, fire outbreaks, which we cannot underestimate. So in promoting their businesses, traders dealing in second clothes currently use different social media platforms associated with privacy issues. So upon this background, motivated by the desire to investigate the impact of social media performance privacy on the performance of small businesses dealing in second-hand clothes in the Owino market. So we look at partly the literature review. So these websites include Facebook, we have Snapchat, we have Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Instagram, just to mention a few. But the relationship and satisfaction, cost-friendly, and promoting business operations internationally. So this study is basically focused on the privacy of social media. And according to the different writers, in this case we considered Ali, among others, is saying the right of someone to keep information to themselves, or at least to share it only with relevant people. So that's how we're trying to define social media privacy. So privacy aims at protecting social media users' information away from unauthorized users. As such, social media users' personal information and business information, experiences, knowledge, and opinions are protected. So that is the issue of privacy we are trying to cultivate. The methodology, we considered a study population of 108,535 registered businesses in Uganda. That is according to UBOS. UBOS is Uganda Bureau of Statistics. So a sample of 384 traders, businesses dealing in second-hand clothes were investigated. So these 384 are part of the vendors in the Owino market. So the characteristics of the methodology we used are basically questionnaires. We received them from 365 respondents. Gender, that is 56% are women because they're the major dealers. and the 44 were male. The age bracket majority are below. They belong to 25 to 29, and the 26% is 30 to 44 years, 34 years of age. Education levels, majority are diploma holders, and 39% had certificates. So those are the study findings. Still, the study revealed that the mean and the standard deviation for social media privacy and performance is 3.2419. That is according to the descriptive statistics, which I can't dig into. Then we had the Pearson correlation coefficient was used to establish the relationship between the independent and the dependent variables. But still I cannot because of the time. Then the qualitative results, these were basically the questionnaires, and some of the findings were, this according to personal note, if we didn't expose, say it, you see, if I put anything on social media regarding my business, I don't allow it to be accessed by everybody because I don't want my competitors to understand me a lot, but I want my customers to be aware of my new product that I have. The reason I do this is to attract more customers who in turn improve my performance. However, some respondents didn't believe that social media privacy has an association with small business performance, while others think that social media privacy has a negative effect on performance of the business. Then someone said, my friend, you people in teaching didn't understand the dynamics of our performance. What matters in the business is how much cash I have to buy new stock. I have no time for social media things. Then someone else said, my son, the moment you restrict access to information about your business, customers will not understand what you have in your business. So this makes it difficult to attract and retain customers, especially in this generation of WhatsApp. But anyway, those who are not educated may not see the importance of social media, and yet it is important to promote businesses. Then the regression results indicate that social media privacy has a significant positive effect on the performance of small businesses dealing in second-hand clothes. So that is the regression partly, like it is there. The discussion. Study findings are in agreement with who revealed that social media enables businesses to achieve different organization goals that include marketing, advertising, publication, relations, human resource, and solving organization problems. They also indicated that social media affects business brand, position and awareness, customer attraction, retention, and also purchasing decision. Still in that discussion, further reported that the social media integration into business operations create a strong network. Like you can easily interact with everybody across the world. Show that media users have privacy concerns. That is, there's a lot of impersonation. Someone can open up a name in your account. That makes it ready and they use it for other things. Further revealed that social media users disclose considerable amount of personal information without being aware that others can access it. So in summary, this paper intended to establish the contribution of social media privacy, the performance of small businesses dealing in second-hand clothes. So these regression results revealed that social media privacy accounts for 30.8% of the percentage in small business performance. Also, the correlation results indicate that significant positive relationship between social media privacy and small business performance. So, given the study findings, there is a positive significant association between social media privacy and small business performance. Entrepreneurs need to understand how to protect their personal information as well as business secrets on different social media platforms. So you find that most of the vendors in Kampala, they have not taken note of that. The government should develop policies that will ensure social media privacy. Thank you.
All right, if we could have the panels have a seat at the table for a brief question and answer session, I would be most appreciative. So Dr. Akpan, is he back there? And Dr. Lloyd and Dr. Whitaker, if you could just have a seat. We just have a few minutes of questions. Thank you so much. All right, does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Okay, so it's a really interesting paper on social media privacy, and one of the things that I've always make your name much bigger on the screen. So that's my first comment. But secondly, I want to know what you mean by businesses using social media privacy. Are we talking about Facebook? Are we talking primarily Facebook? Okay. And so you were at, so what does limiting that mean? Do people have to join a group, or do they have to get permission to see this material? How is social media privacy established for these businesses?
Should I answer now?
Oh, yeah.
Social media privacy is basically to deal with how best can businesses promote themselves in use of the social media, because it's that trend. Recently in the agenda, everyone talks about researchers do more of the privacy of the businesses. So we're trying to establish how best or what best can be done if a business is to use these platforms for growth. So that is what we are trying to dig into, to see, can they really go ahead to be a little private on certain issues in regard to the social media? Because basically the major, as per the case in point in Uganda, the major platforms are Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp. So we're trying to see how best can I use my Facebook account as a business person in regard to promoting my business without someone else intruding into my businesses or to use it for their personal gains. So that's the privacy we are trying to investigate.
So did you look at particular privacy controls on Facebook and WhatsApp? Did you see what those were and how people, some person might just start their personal page and just let their friends see their business stuff.
Yeah.
That's one way, one level of privacy. Another person might set up a page for their business that's open, but you have to join the page. You have to so they can have a gatekeeper function. So those are two different ways. And I'm not even sure what all of this. WhatsApp also has a similar sort of function. And did you look at the different mediums that they use? We just asked people questions about what they thought.
We asked depending on the personality and also the age bracket, and then we also depended on the agenda. However, in Uganda, we don't have so much of those policies. They're just being initiated, especially on Facebook. Like social media, to access social media, you have to pay a tax. There's a daily tax you have to pay, and then if you can pay the monthly or so. Most people acted like they're not interested anymore because it's a little expensive. And then for those who are using it, they had also their own challenges because they're saying if you limit people to join your page, like you will not get customers. And someone's like, if you limit my information, if I don't display it, I'll not get anyone. And yet others are saying it should be good enough. We get those policies. So it was depending on different personalities. So we didn't get the exact thing. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes. Just say your name so we kind of.
My name is Well, that's the basis of a paper I'm currently working on, because the victim, for the most part, is those who don't have the protection. When I say don't have the protection, we're talking about cities like Baltimore, we're talking about poverty areas. I'll give you an example. One of the research points I had tracked two doctors, one in a suburb in Maryland, one in Baltimore, and they both got off at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nothing special about that. But the one in Baltimore was in trouble with the law. Why? Because 3 o'clock in the morning, you're kind of tired, and you went through the same traffic like 3 times. You go through that traffic like 3 times, third time, you're getting a notice from the NBA. You don't pay attention to it, it's a yellow envelope. You get stopped for a stop sign, you're going to jail because you got 3 offenses going through the light that you didn't pay for. Now let's go to the county in that suburb. I mentioned Brookville before, which is where I actually did study from. You get off at 3 o'clock in the morning, you go through a stoplight 3 times. There's no camera there. You did exactly the same thing. You went through the light 4 times, 5 times. In fact, you might have saw the local sheriff who knows you, know where you live, know where your house is. He'll stop you and say, don't do that. And you do it again next week. But the point is, there's no record of it. So you continue doing the same thing that the Baltimore doctor does. And one ends up in jail and the other one, well, nothing. That's not to say that the cameras themselves are discriminating against you, but again, I get back to this density thing, where basically you're being little, like any scientific experiment. If I do a better frequency of you, I'm gonna find more information because it's just a fact that I'm just taking that snapshot. If your question is leading to, is there a grid? You have programs like in DC right now. If you are a homeowner, you have an outside camera, you have someone like Comcast security center, the police will actually ask you to participate in the overall grid. You become part of that grid, which means with the advent of these ring cameras, particularly door cameras, they all have IP addresses. And whether you know whether this IP address is available, point is they can be sanctioned, they can be used even after the fact. If there was a crime committed and you were inside that area and there are 4 door cameras, the police can go from door to door. And if you already signed up the program, by the way, they don't have to go door to door. They already have your camera view, point of view. So it becomes this increasing grid and starts to look not so much as the idealistic 1984, but to a certain extent, everything you do is being recorded. So yes, the answer to your question is it becomes an ever-growing grid, and to a certain extent, privacy becomes not what it used to mean.
I think we have time for one more question, and then we're going to move to the other panel. We've fallen behind a little bit. So if you have a question, I'll take one last question. Otherwise, we're prepared for the next panel. Thank you all very much. Let's see, I'm going to see Brian Jenkins and Emily Kramer, Akwazi Boateng, Tia Tyree. So those are our 3 next speakers. So